Mermaids. Seagulls, devilfish, dreadful in hunger for flesh of man. Mermaid waters, that be our path.
For centuries, mankind has been fascinated by the endless beauty and terror of the seas. Many myths and legends have sprung up over the years, many of which I've discussed on this channel before in previous videos. Usually I cover the iconography of specific characters from Pirates of the Caribbean and the myths and legends that inspired them. But today I'm trying something a bit different. Today I'll be covering one of humanity's greatest myths, mermaids. We see them everywhere, from cartoonish fairy tales to coffee mascots, and they're ubiquitous with the alluring mystery and horrors of the eternal abyss of the seas. But where do these stories come from? Why are mermaids so well known around the world? Buckle up, because this is going to get weird. To start things off, I'd like to discuss the lore of the mermaids in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. The first appearance of mermaids was in the 2006 young Jack Sparrow novel called The Siren Song. Mermaids here are portrayed as somewhat evil, trying to enslave Jack for all eternity. In this story, they come from a mysterious island that exists between the world of the living and Davy Jones's locker. Of course, Phantom Islands aren't a new topic on this channel. I've covered them in my Barbossa video, but I'll quickly cover them now. Before navigational technology became so advanced, sailors relied on the naked eye to spot islands. But, of course, this was only so reliable. So, many sailors falsely reported spotting islands while on voyages. I'll be discussing the stories of Odysseus later in the video, but he famously encountered sirens on a mysterious island that could be interpreted as a phantom island. And in their most popular appearance in the franchise, on Stranger Tides, the mermaids also inhabit a mysterious and uninhabited island. Granted, it's not quite a phantom island, but rather, it's the home of the Fountain of Youth. Maybe I'll cover that in its own video someday. Now, on to mermaids themselves. The earliest known figure comprising of the lower body of a fish and the upper body of a person wasn't quite a mermaid, but actually a merman. Ea, the Babylonian god of wisdom, creation, and water, serving as the inspiration for Poseidon and Neptune of Greek and Roman myths respectively. He was often known as the mediator in conflicts, often resorting to trickery and deceit to keep the peace. As most religions and mythologies share the concept of a flood myth, where the gods flood the world as some form of punishment, so too does Babylonian myth, though sadly the causes of the flood were lost to history. What is known, however, is that mankind disturbed and disrespected the king of the gods, Enlil, and Ea warned the chosen hero of the impending disaster and warned him to build a boat to survive the flood along with his family and other living creatures. Why do I bring this up? Well, some of the most common stories told through history are of deities becoming enraged with mankind and flooding the world. Now, in the modern context, we understand that these are stories from civilizations that existed in coastal areas and flood basins, so the ancient cultures were bound to have stories like these. However, it's important to understand that the idea of humanoid sea creatures are as tied to human culture as the idea of gods themselves, going as far back as being one and the same. The earliest example of a female mermaid I can find is the ancient Syrian goddess Atargatis, who, according to legend, watched over the people of northern Syria, ensuring fertility and general well-being for her worshippers, and, as such, they constructed a temple in her honor and refrained from eating fish out of respect. Later, in ancient Greece, we find the Nereids, the 50 daughters of the Old Man of the Sea, an unknown god who has been associated with Nereus, Proteus, Triton, and many others. The Nereids were said to be sea nymphs, said to be half fish and half women, the spirits of the sea. They were said to be the embodiment of everything kind about the seas, beautiful and graceful, singing for their father and inhabiting a golden palace in the Aegean Sea. In a classic case of Greek gods being super petty and cruel, Cassiopeia bragged that her daughter Andromeda was more beautiful than the Nereids, and Poseidon heard this and, out of sympathy for them, flooded Ethiopia and sent a sea monster there to torment the inhabitants. Just a quick side note, Ethiopia, not to be confused with Ethiopia, was supposedly the land in Africa and some of Asia unexplored by Greek explorers, deriving its name from burned face, a vague term for darker-skinned people. According to the Roman scientist Pliny the Elder, Legatus of Gaul supposedly once wrote to Emperor Augustus that he spotted some Nereids wash up dead on the shore. Pliny also claimed that seamen also existed similar to the Nereids, and they'd climb aboard ships and try to sink them. Going back to Greek myth, we have to take a quick look at the sirens, as they were both portrayed as half bird, half women, but also like mermaids. Of course, these were not positive depictions of fair water maidens, but rather demonic creatures that lured men to their deaths with their enchanted songs. Famously, Odysseus, the Greek king of Ithaca, had a run-in with the sirens, sailing with his crew, but knowing to tie his men to the sail so they wouldn't be tempted by the siren songs. All were counted in the ancient epic tale, the Odyssey. If the name Odysseus sounds familiar with anybody who's watched my previous episodes in the series, that's because he was tied to the ancient myths of the sea goddess Calypso, who wanted Odysseus to stay on her island with her for all eternity. Of course, in Pirates of the Caribbean, Calypso is the sea goddess who fell in love with Davy Jones, so this goes to show how many of our famous stories of the seas come from Greek myth. Now we enter general European myth, as the stories of mermaids began to spread from the numerous cultures of the Mediterranean Sea and Middle East. Just like with many myths of the Mediterranean, stories of mermaids were a mix of tales about beautiful and peaceful marine maidens, but also stories of horrible, demonic monstrosities that seduced men to their untimely deaths. In the 1430s, a local legend in the Netherlands was of a group of young women who found a mermaid while on a fishing boat and brought her aboard. They took her home and dressed her in human clothes, but they couldn't get her to speak. In 1539, Aulus Magnus made a map depicting of the most horrid sea monsters around Scandinavia, including mermaids and mermen. He noted that if they were caught while on a fishing voyage, they could be returned to the seas, or else to cause a magical storm. Of course, we have to discuss the age of discovery and the supposed sightings of mermaids by Europeans in the New World. Legend tells that when Columbus arrived in the Caribbean in the late 1400s, his general spotted mermaids in the shallows near an island known now as the Dominican Republic. He wrote in his journal, "The day before, when the admiral was going to the Rio del Oro, he said he saw 3 mermaids who came quite high out of the water, but were not as pretty as depicted, for somehow in the face they looked like men." In 1614, the famous John Smith, later known for his encounters with Pocahontas and the establishment of Jamestown, claimed to have spotted a mermaid off the coast of modern Newfoundland, describing it as having long green hair, imparted to her an original character that was by no means unattractive. It's unknown what Smith spotted in the seas, but what Columbus's general spotted was more than likely a manatee, a long endangered species of marine mammals known for grazing in the shallow reefs. The frequent mistaking of manatees as mermaids actually earned the animal family the name Sirenians. Dugongs are also part of the Sirenian family, and, wouldn't you guess it, dugongs swam in the waters of the coasts of ancient Babylonia and Syria. Can I conclusively say that these animals were the origin of the ancient legends? Truthfully, I can't say for sure, but nonetheless I find the theory fascinating. Now, I could just end the video here. Dugongs are the culprit, but to look at this through a near entirely European and Middle Eastern perspective would only be one part of the picture. Truth be told, this story gets far stranger. Thailand has their myths of the Suvanamaka, a mermaid who fell in love with a human prince. In Brazil, local legends tell of Iara, a mermaid or siren-like creature that lives in the waters of the Amazon River. West, Central, and South African and Afro-American cultures tell stories of Mamiwata, a sometimes humanoid, sometimes half-fish, half-woman water spirit, often associated with healing and fertility. In Indonesian folklore, legends exist of Nya Roro Kidul, considered the queen of the South Seas, and she had powers to control tsunamis and the storms of the area. South Korea's Gyeomundo Island has their own local legend of Senjiki, a mermaid who would warn fishermen of oncoming storms, and she would only be spotted at night. Napier, New Zealand is home to another local legend, this one of a mermaid who married a man and had a child with him, spending her nights on land with him and returning to the sea during the day, but leaving him forever when he tried to turn her into a human. Isn't it odd that all these cultures around the world tell similar stories of water maidens who either protect, seduce, love, or destroy men? Now, there are some odd theories that there was a once common ancestor to mankind that was an aquatic ape, but this is generally disregarded by the scientific community given the sheer lack of evidence. Now, if I may present my own theories, I'd suspect that the link between these cultures and depicting creatures with the beauty of human women who come from the sea might actually be more symbolic than anything. The common thread with mermaids is how they're all embodiments of womanhood in some way, such as the protective Mamiwata or Adder Goddess, the beautiful and seductive Suvanamaka or Nereids, the deceptively beautiful but deadly Iara or Sirens. I think this speaks more to how we see the seas themselves rather than anything else, as all early human civilizations formed on waterways. I can imagine those ancient cultures were captivated by the beauty and mystery of the sea, and many must have likened said beauty to stories of different women, as we still do to this day.
My life, my love, my lady is the sea.
But the truth of the matter is, we'll never truly know what's down in the depths of the sea. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. Check out the description of this video to find links to different pages on manatee conservation, because even though they aren't mermaids, they're still lovely creatures and they need to be protected and loved like anything else. While we can't definitively make any claims of the existence of mermaids, we can conclude that the ocean is home to many beautiful creatures that deserve to exist alongside us for many years. So please do your part to help these amazing creatures. Thanks to my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. If you want your name on screen along with these fine people, feel free to donate $5 a month, which directly goes towards keeping this channel afloat. Anyways, thank you all so much, and always remember, when you look out to the seas, they might be watching you too.